Today's guest is Ned Medania. Ned is the creator of the Near-Death Experiences Facebook page that has over 57,000 members. And he has served on the board of directors for the International Association of Near-Death Studies. Besides all this, he has also had a near-death experience when he was young. Ned, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and share. I love getting this information out, and I feel like even though I can be a little bit shy or timid speaking up, I think it's a good thing, and over time, I'm more comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great thing that you created the page. I think you're doing a great service to people. And if anybody here is new to the podcast or new to near-death experiences, be sure to go over to his Facebook page, Near-Death Experience, and join. I mean, it's free, and you're going to see a ton of content over there. So, Ned, you have had an experience when you were young. Can you tell us about it?
Well, I don't have conscious memories of it, and I've heard a lot of NDEs talk about that. It can be years or decades later on, and then memories return. However, the reason I know I had one is that over time I have talked to several mediums and people with strong intuition, and several of them have asked me, even without me mentioning it or asking about it, have you had one of those NDEs? And I would say no, or not that I remember. And then they would tell me that my energy felt like someone who had that. And after the last time I heard that, I kind of I asked if she could really kind of hone in on that. And then I talked to my mom and kind of asked about it. And then she didn't really remember. However, I'm thinking as an infant, I think one time I might have had like a high fever or something, and perhaps I had something brief, but the reason I mention it is that one, other NDEs or mediums have picked up on it, or that my energy is kind of different, and it kind of also explains part of my childhood, because my childhood I was not like a normal kid. Like I had a hard time relating to the games on the playground or things. Like I was always off kind of in nature, looking at the trees or the ants or nature. And so it's just, and I've always had kind of a feeling that there's something more here, almost like how society is and how people are. This is it's important as it is. People are learning things, but I feel like it's almost like there's a bigger world, outside of Earth, that, in the cosmos or, in the universe.
All right. Have you ever considered getting any hypnotherapy to see if you can recall any of those accounts?
I've heard of people mentioning that, and I'm open to it. I think, I think actually tried some past life regressions, and I felt like perhaps I wasn't fully ready or into it, because I was, like it wasn't. What's interesting is that I had like visions or feelings like I was in Europe a few centuries in the past, near the Alps, and I was working almost like on a farm or something. I mean, maybe it's all accurate, because I have talked to people who are intuitive and actually who have told me of other lifetimes I've had, and some are in that area, but I haven't had any memories of that NDE. yet.
Mm. Do you feel like you have some kind of natural homesickness or longing for a home or loneliness, perhaps, even though you don't know why?
I definitely had it a lot more when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I was a kid, definitely, or like in school, always just, looking, like almost if, life had like if this was like a movie or TV show, and if there was a camera, and it was God, and I'd be looking at the camera like, is this, what am I doing here?
Mm-hmm.
but I think over time, I've definitely integrated more and a more understanding of the purpose I have here, and that we all have here, that it's important. It's important. And so it doesn't really make as much sense. In the past, I would read the New Age teachings about, like, meditating all day and then leaving the earth plane behind, as if this was bad, and as if there are better places out there, and why be here. But when you listen to a lot of people who've had near-death experiences, they talk about, we're here for a good reason. We're here to implement the heaven down to earth. We're here to express that unconditional love, and all those more beautiful, but also real important things here. It's like how much of a society lives or is based on, let's say, outdated or archaic traditions of the past, and it that involve abuse, or involve almost like it's almost like a lot of what happens on earth isn't of a higher consciousness at all. It's almost like it's the opposite, and so the message from near-death experiences is to kind of unchain from these generational traumas, and to heal, and to express more of our souls rather than our egos.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that this experience ultimately led you to creating this Facebook page?
I guess ultimately, yeah, as like at a very root cause, because, as a kid, I never really fit in, and I felt, what was I doing here? I was always an observer, and I felt like I didn't belong on Earth, and I'm like, why am I here? And so as a teenager, it kind of culminated to, thoughts of suicide, or like, I don't want to be here. This doesn't even make sense with how people are treating each other. I've always been extremely empathic. And so when people, even if people are hurting other people, I get hurt, and I feel like, I get down. And so I saw a lot of how things are in the world, what's on the news, what's on, a lot of the lying that happens with people in power. And I don't mean, at all levels. I mean, like, even in a school, when you have sometimes, superintendents who, everyone has issues, and so perhaps because of how empathic I was, and I saw how people really are behind their masks, it just was kind of, I saw how ugly people can be. And so it was a process for me to learn, to have faith, and that we're all growing, and that, that there is a higher purpose. There is, there are angels, and there are good forces who are helping, and it's not hopeless. For a long time, I felt like it was hopeless. Like, this whole world is hopeless. Here, the experiencers kind of, they remind that it's not hopeless at all, and that there's a higher plan.
So that was kind of, as you were saying, like a subconscious root, perhaps, of studying this, or deep down inside, that was the root of starting the Facebook page, right?
Yeah. And, on a more mundane level, I think I started it because I started to find people's experiences on YouTube and articles about them. And I felt like, this is so important, this information, and it's not really easily found. And I was on Facebook, and I thought, I'll create a group, and I'll post all these videos and articles. And it's almost a way to organize my thoughts. And so I didn't have any idea that it would grow like it has, or become like kind of the social phenomenon, because it's a group and people are always commenting. And so initially it was just a place to share articles and kind of organize thoughts. But I've heard that it's kind of, I'll say a happy coincidence, or AKA a synchronicity, that I kind of I started it because for the amount of people who sometimes are disagreeing or bickering over religion or atheism or politics or anything, a group like near-death experiences, which is kind of at the core of a lot of these major human beliefs, or human ways of perceiving things. And people often can have wildly different opinions on things. I had to be very much a mediator, and helping to unify people who are very different, and to help with that. And it just so happens that I tend to have a natural inclination towards that. And so it's kind of very helpful that, I've heard from people that, it wouldn't have had the impact it's had if I wasn't who I was.
Interesting. When you created it, was it the first near-death experience page on Facebook?
That's a good question. I think so. I mean, it seems like it seems almost like a bold claim, but again, at the time, this was in September of 2013, and Facebook was only a few years old at the time. I think Facebook was like 7 years old or something. I mean, near-death experiences weren't, as commonly known or talked about. I mean, even though it was pretty, like YouTube was kind of like a major start of that, and I think a lot of the NDE videos, they started to come out around 2008, and but then I think my group is, or was, the first one, because when it said enter a group name, and I typed in near-death experiences, and there wasn't any conflicts, or that name is taken or anything. And so yeah, probably the first one on Facebook.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, you have probably helped thousands, if not tens of thousands of people on your page. I would assume that it must feel pretty good. Yeah,
it's interesting, and I've heard this a lot from NDEers who would tell me or message me that I don't know how much healing and how much value has come out of that. And perhaps a part of me, is like okay with that, because I don't want it to get an ego about it. But it's like, yeah, that's awesome, and someday perhaps, in my life review or in other areas, that I might meet some people who were impacted, and it just kind of sinks in that how it helped people, because I have, and I still do, like, even kind of pray about it, just like I wanted to help people, help the world. And and even this is a good example when I say pray, because a lot of people, they think religion, if you're religious, you pray. If not, you don't pray. But when something about near-death experiences they teach us is that it's not about religion or not religion. And so prayer is just, you think of it as energy, just an intention. And so when you put an intention out into the universe, it often has effects and consequences. And, there is a power of prayer, of intention and of energy. So, yeah.
So how did you get involved with IONS? Did they reach out to you because of your page?
Well, IONS, it was because I was helping out. And so the first time I heard about IONS, I think was in 2012 in the summertime. And at the time I was living in Colorado, and I think I came across their website, and they talked about how they had their annual conference on Labor Day weekend in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is next to Phoenix. And I thought, oh, that's not too far. And I thought, this is like the topic that I am most passionate about, because it saved my life. And so I thought, oh, cool. I can meet people who've had these. I can, learn. I can take in the energy. And so I went there, and yeah, the conferences have been almost like a giant families. And what's cool about people who have these is that it really oftentimes opens up their hearts and their, even their intuition and their empathy. So even if they weren't like that previously, it changes people. And so when you go to these conferences, you meet people, even though you may have never met them before in this lifetime. It's almost like it feels like a family, because they just know you. They know, oh, it's Ned, so it's really cool, and each other. And so there's a lot of love in these conferences. And so I attended I think I attended in 2012 in Scottsdale. I think I skipped 13, forgot where that was, but I went to the 14 in Newport Beach in California, near Los Angeles. And then in 15, trying to remember, but I was at the conferences almost every year. And then I thought, okay, I started to kind of get the whole message. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm here. What else can I do? And I was helping out with their microphones and equipment and speakers, because I wanted to help. And then I think it was in 2016 in the Orlando conference, or the one, either that or the one after. And someone asked me if I was interested in serving on the board, and I said sure, even though it was kind of a lot of responsibility. I felt like I wanted to try it out, and so I definitely have wanted to help. And I think in the last few years, I've had a lot of personal changes. Like I moved from Colorado to California, and had a more of a busier personal life, and I haven't kept up with IONS as much. However, my heart is in there, and if I have time in the future, I definitely, like I always support them. And I support all people who are spreading the word about NDEs, or supporting experiencers. And because we're all, just like NDEs teach, we're all really on the same team, even other countries, even other groups. I mean, ultimately, that is the whole message. And so that's what I appreciate the most.
When you go to these conferences, how many people go? Like, is it thousands or tens of thousands, or are they small?
Well, these conferences are usually at like an embassy suites or a Marriott. And so anywhere between, I think, 250 up to 400 or 500.
Wow.
In these hotels. And and they are annually. I know that this year and last year, because of COVID, it's virtually, online.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the conferences, and they're all over, and so every year it's it's usually on Labor Day weekend. It's usually 4 days,
Mm-hmm.
Thursday through Sunday, and it's a different city, East Coast or West Coast or Central, and there are often people who come from other countries, India, Iran, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, etc.
Mm-hmm. I just heard you say not too long ago here that NDEs saved your life. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. Well, so in they saved my life in a way that I was really needing answers. I was, this was when I was in high school, or just, kind of at the end of high school, and I was questioning everything. I don't think I came across NDEs until a few years after it, but it was in that process where I was like, why am I here? I didn't really have a family that I was, if you think about a family in the movies or TV where everyone just, really loves each other a lot, I didn't really have that. Of course, I had, loving parents, but I felt like a fish out of water, like what I needed and who I was kind of off on my own, and so I had that, which I'm not alone. A lot of people have that, but also I was socially awkward, extremely shy, didn't have really any friends, any relationships, and it didn't really have anything to look forward to or live for. And I thought also, like, I'm extremely analytical kind of person. I can consider myself a scientist, so like I see how things are in the world and how people are, and like I just kind of interpolate, or extrapolate into the future. Like, okay, this is my experience so far, and I felt like, I was in high school, and then I felt like, well, college, it looks kind of, more of the same. And when I saw how it is kind of in the corporate, settings, I thought, I'm not happy in any of these situations. It doesn't seem to be a reason to really, do this. It felt like a lot of a trudging kind of work, and then you live and then you die, and what's the point, and so it wasn't until that I came across near-death experiences, in Dr. Raymond Moody's book, A Life After Life, and I started seeing experiencers share their story on YouTube, and then I was like, oh, and it was kind of like a reminder: there is a purpose, and there is a higher intelligence, that what I'm seeing in how people are oftentimes is not, that it may be here, but there is more to kind of, strive towards. There are more intelligent beings out there than humans that I can kind of look up to, and there is something more here, and there is a purpose. And it was like, okay, any thoughts of leaving this place early was kind of like instantly evaporated, because I fully, perhaps it's because I might have had an NDE, because I had that whole mindset. It didn't take a lot of pondering, like, is this really true? I don't know if I can trust. Like, it was like a reminder: this is it. Yes, there's a purpose, and I'm on board.
Oh, it sounds like that. It just, after you discovered NDEs and stuff, you just instantly knew it was real for you. Like, you didn't have to question it.
Right. And also a big part of that is because of the evidence. And I know, a lot of the scientific world still keeps on ignoring a lot of evidence and keeps on talking about, oh, we figured it out. It's lack of oxygen in the brain. We figured it out. It's the same. It's the same kind of half baked stories, or ways of trying to sweep this under the rug. Because when you look at the cases and you see the people and what really happened, even evidence empirically and scientifically, like there isn't a way to explain it as just a hallucination. Like you see what's going on. And in my own life, I started to have some spiritual experiences, and I started talking to mediums, and after the information that was coming through, and it kind of all kind of related and connected, and then I was like, yeah, I mean, it's impossible to write it off as not possible or something else.
So since you've had the Facebook page going on for a long time, and you've probably read many, many NDE stories and researched it a lot, what have you seen on your Facebook page that has impacted you the most? That just you read it or saw it and it just rocked you to the core? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, let's see. I mean, I think for me, the biggest ones are the transformations that people have, especially, the changes of heart, changes of character. And when people are shown or remember about why things are happening in their life, and details. I'm trying to recall, there are so many I've heard, and there are cases involving, extraterrestrials, or cases involving, Jesus, family members, all kinds. But I think the ones that have the most impact on me are the people who come back and know, how do I put this? They are so humbled, and they know how intricate all the daily occurrences in our lives are. And I know that's a little vague, but I'm trying to think of a more specific example. It's almost like, now I understand why I had this particular parent and this particular relationship, and I see things in a different way. And I knew that I chose to do that, and why. Those cases, which are fairly common, but every one of them kind of helps even remind me that of my own challenges in my life, that there's a reason for everything. And I think it's just that reminder that helps me so much, and always the message of love, compassion. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite NDE story?
It's so hard to, because I love a lot of them. Just thinking, from all, the famous ones like Eben Alexander, Anita Moorjani, then other people I know. It's like I can't pick one favorite, because all of them are so important in their own way. And even Dr. Rajiv Party. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah, I have.
And I've met him at IONS conferences, and his story, and the whole change that happened in his life, and how his character, how he used to be, compared to how he met, I think it was his father in his NDE, and told him, you need to change. This isn't, you're on the wrong path. And he came back and he's like, okay, completely humbled. And, and then that kind of also reminds me a little bit of Howard Storm. But, it's like all of them are so important. Have you heard of Angie Fenimore? I appreciate her story a lot because it's often, kind of hyped up as, Angie went to hell and then was saved. But if you hear her story, and I recall I was in the room at her talk in the IANS Orlando conference in 2016, and she kind of was explaining, it was the best thing that ever happened to her, and the label of hell, it's like it was her own, it was her own stuff, or I don't want to say emotions, or her current state at that time was not healthy, and I think, I forget her situation, but I think she was like in a denial of things, and so her death kind of made her face all that, and it was scary. So it was hell, which is just a human term, but then she kind of came out the other side of that and saw, the purpose in it, and so, I really appreciate her story for that, and every story.
So when you go to these events, I call them the stars of NDEs, like the speakers. Do you kind of know them all and you see them and, hey, what's going on? Hey, give me a hug. I haven't seen you since last year.
A little bit. Well, and hugs, definitely, because, at these conferences, it's, people are so in that heart energy. And so it's, much less about ego. Of course, everyone has ego. We all, it's part of being on Earth, and I think, even for NDEers who become well known, it can be kind of a little challenge to kind of balance it all. And to, because when people, they call you important and you're kind of at the front of the table and you're the keynote, it's easy to, it's just you, it can be hard to remember to, we're all equal. And we all are. And that's why I love, how NDEs remind us that we're all children, because it's true. I forgot the question. Yeah. Hugs for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that there are other beings besides us humans, and then you mentioned aliens. So do you think that for some people, when they have their NDE experience, aliens, or just at least other non-human intelligent beings or multidimensional beings?
Oh yeah. Many experiencers have mentioned this, and I have a friend, Bonnie, who particularly, her NDE involved these, and even Howard Storm talked about, aliens, and of course, alien is just a broad kind of word, like you said. Like, we're just a small planet here on Earth, and humans are just one species, and even Eben Alexander, the neurosurgeon, he in his NDE came back and he said there are billions of other advanced, civilizations out there, and it's a common thread in NDEs, where people become like their mind open or their eyes open to the larger reality, that's just beyond Earth. And actually, it's kind of funny. Last night, I think I saw my first UFO, and I posted about it on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
It was, and so perhaps it was synchronicity, and I'll just quickly describe it.
Yeah.
It was around 3:30 a.m. And, I like to keep my curtains open, looking at the moon, stars, moonlight at night. It's beautiful, but I saw what looked like a planet, just above the trees. It was just a bright dot. I was just kind of observing it because I didn't see any other planets or anything around, and maybe because of the nearby city lights. And so this one, it was much brighter than everything around it. And then I was watching it, thinking, is it a plane? If it's a plane, I'm kind of near an airport. And so usually the lights, move on a track, for landing, but it didn't do that. And then it started to move, one way, and then went the other way, which is airplanes don't do that. And it could be a helicopter, but then it moved up and down and kind of was moving in these random patterns. And it didn't have, strobe lights or, the typical green and red lights that airplanes and helicopters have. It wasn't a drone, because I have one. And it was just a bright kind of a beige, orangish, a white light. And it would it looked like it was high altitude, and it wasn't a satellite. It wasn't, moving in a straight line. It was kind of all over the place. And it was in that area for almost an hour. I was watching it. And so, I've heard so many of these cases. I've heard so many NDEs mention them, and you're hearing in the news, more of the government is finally opening up about it. Oh yeah, we have seen these and whatnot. And so definitely we're not alone. And one thing I love about NDEs, and as they often will tell us, that there are other civilizations out there that want to help us, and some that aren't as benevolent, but there are ones who want to help us. And it's almost like it can, if you think about it, what a cool concept to think about all of humanity kind of uniting more, and to realize that there's a much bigger playground out there, and what is possible from that, and even a near-death experiencer, Melon Thomas Benedict, who I met at the 2012 conference, actually, a few years before he passed away. He talked about how in his NDE, he saw, I think, before 400 years into our future, if not sooner, we would begin working together much more closely with some of them, which is interesting.
I think that if they would just, land on the White House lawn or somewhere where the whole world could see them, and, obviously see them, and there they are, and boom, there they are.
Well, what's interesting is that in 1954, that kind of almost actually happened. I don't know if you heard about that incident, and I have studied a lot of cases, like the Phoenix lights in 97, which was, tens of thousands of people all over Arizona and Mexico saw them. It was in papers. But the 54 incident, there was actually a fleet of them over the White House, and it was in newspapers. But of course, at the time, and even if that happened today, it's so easy to kind of in the news, kind of spin things or make things go away, or put some other angle on it, and unfortunately, kind of, a lot of the people kind of in charge are experts at this, they call it psyops, or psychological operations, knowing how people are and how quickly people tend to forget history, and, using that. However, to your point, I think a lot more people are seeing them on their own, just like I saw last night, and people are talking amongst each other. And so even if in headlines, it kind of writes it off as, a weather balloon, people know better now.
I would assume even if an alien hijacked CNN or something and said, "Hey, I'm an alien," people would be like, "Oh, that isn't an alien. It's just someone playing games or something," because we're in so much disbelief at this point, or confusion.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking that if somehow it was made apparent that they're real to everybody, that's indisputable, I think humanity would take a great leap, because we would realize, all of a sudden we would realize, hey, we're one species and there's others out there, and you would just look at life differently, and maybe we would stop warring so much and, doing all the stuff, the terrible stuff we do.
Yeah, and it would be cool if it were that simple. And I can't really answer because maybe it is, but I think what I've learned is that there are so many reasons behind things, and so like I think what I've seen is that probably they know or they have reasons for not doing that yet, but also it's based on humanity, because people are so, I mean, today people are still adamant that the earth is flat. I mean, and so we have satellites and we have SpaceX launching like every week, and yet people are so funny in terms of how much we tend to want to see what we want. However, but like you said, there's a lot of people who are open and who are interested in the truth now.
It's interesting that you saw that. I wish that I could have on my house, or have a house and have a roof that was glass. So whenever because I don't really have time to be outside looking at the sky. So at least like maybe every night when I was lying in bed, I could kind of get a sky view and just kind of, lay there and look around for a while until I fall asleep. I think that we humans in general don't really look up in the sky that often.
Definitely. Yeah. And living in most cities, the light pollution is so strong that most of us can't even see most of the stars or planets even, and so it's perfect. Like I recall this background I have here is a perfect example of but it just reminds me when I was in Colorado, central Colorado, and I was camping on a mountain at around 10,000 feet elevation. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and I went outside of my tent and I looked up at the stars, and in between all the trees, which are all black silhouettes, and you just saw this bright carpet of stars. It was the brightest I've ever seen them. It was amazing.
As I was listening to your story, I was starting to think, is it possible that he is a star seed? Now, you said that you can recall other past lives, so I would think that may or may not be true, because from what I know of star seeds, they're here the first time. You have any opinion on that?
That's a really interesting question, and I've heard I've heard that I might be. I've heard that I've had a reading, and she mentioned that I wasn't from here. I've heard all kinds of things, and so it's a good point, because I've heard from many people that I have had past lives here. I have heard also that I'm not really from here, and I don't think the two are mutually exclusive, because it's so vast to think about how many our individual histories, like as souls, what other lifetimes we might have had on Earth and other places, and how I've heard from a lot of NDEs even that our souls are not from the same place. It's almost like a bunch of us, say, it could be from Sirius, that region, and some of us are from Arcturus, and some of us are from, what's up, Pleiades, and some of us are from Earth as a home base. And so, I don't really have the definite answer on that. However, I've heard as a theme from NDEs is that, if you meet people who kind of have a whole different kind of energy and personality, and if you don't really relate to a culture, or like that person, I just don't understand them, they're completely different. Well, it could be also their soul is from a whole different, place too,
Do you get a lot of people personally reaching out to you, or sending you messages, or writing to you, or emails because of the page?
It happens. Sometimes it has happened more than others. I think, in the early on, I was so, I when I take these, what people learn from NDEs, I take them to heart. So when people talk about unconditional love for everyone, I tried to live that as much as I can, and so early on, like if I got any friend requests, I would accept almost everyone. I would just kind of be like that. And over time, I've had to learn, that I've had to learn to also have boundaries, and that they're and so in terms of people messaging me, yeah, I do get people asking me a lot of questions, or if they're struggling with, if there's a grief or someone dying or passed away, help with that. But I think lately I've been so busy elsewhere, like with my work and outside of Facebook. I haven't had as much as I had in the past. But yeah, I definitely have people who are searching answers. Also, sometimes I'm not as active in the group as I had been. Like, I'm definitely active behind the scenes, approving people or approving posts, or and dealing with any issues. But like in terms of posting a lot or commenting a lot, I don't always have a chance to do that. However, now I have 3 other very helpful moderators who kind of are, they help a ton, because it's basically like ever since I started it in September 2013, it's basically like a 24/7 on-call job. I mean, you don't get any vacations. You're on vacation and you get, you still, like checking your phone or laptop, and, but it's interesting to think about. And so this September, it will be 7 years of it, and which is cool. And so I feel like, and so I'm actually thankful for you here, because I feel like, okay, well, I have all this information, and now what do I do with it? And I hear people, they mention, well, you should speak, you should, and so sometimes I'm a little bit lazy in that aspect, and so this helps me to kind of get out too.
Oh, great. What is your most proudest moment, if you have one, from the Facebook page?
Well, I think a big one is supporting people who have either, or who are in the process of transitioning. They might have a terminal illness, or people who have lost others, people who need support. I think overall, that it's that sense of a community, and and so it's in those times, like yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, it was. I think it was only yesterday, with the whole Boulder shooting. And I have some friends who live in Boulder and who posted, actually, Elizabeth Simpson. She posted about how she often shops at that very a grocery store.
Wow.
And that she is safe, but it's helpful for her to know about NDEs and to like put some perspective. Yes, the people who died, it's horrible, but reflecting on a higher plan, a possible higher plan behind this, or understanding it, making peace with it. And so I think the moments that are the most moving are the sense of community and connection with everyone.
What about NDEs and or your page inspires you the most?
A good question. And I think a lot of it is what I shared. And it's about, like, in terms of when people have NDEs and they realize the meaning behind interactions and how important, like a lot of people have the life review. Not everyone has them. And I want to add, even for NDEers and people who haven't had NDEs, just because in your NDE, you don't experience something doesn't mean you won't in the future, or that that's all that you have. Because one thing I've learned about when I looked at so many NDEs is that the elements which are kind of universal, and people who have multiple NDEs, and sometimes they'll have an NDE with a life review and sometimes without, and you realize that there are purposes behind things, and so you can't just take one NDE as if that contains all reality. It's just a small slice. It's like people have said, if Earth, if an NDE was like visiting Earth for the first time for an alien, one alien landed in Hawaii and they saw palm trees and the beach, and another one, was in the Arctic and was just snow and ice, and they're like, well, I saw snow and ice, but there's a larger picture, and so it encompasses both of those things, and so. But I mentioned about the life review because that inspires me so much, because so often I get kind of stressed out or thinking about what I have to do, or, it becomes like life becomes like a list of tasks. Like I have to do this and I have to do that. And then I finally can sleep. But it's just when you're just in that doing, you don't realize all the precious times, like even you and I here on this call, like, and so in our life reviews, we can understand the value of each other, influencing and helping the other. And so it's kind of, it helps us to slow down and appreciate all the little moments, and that how important they are in ways we don't realize yet. I think that is the biggest thing that from the group and from NDEs inspires me.
Yeah, I like that. Over time, are you seeing the growth of the Facebook page just kind of growing at a certain rate, or is it growing faster lately, or did it grow fast a couple years and then slow back down? Can you
Good
comment
question.
on that, on the rate of the growth?
Yeah, and so it's been fairly linear, fairly steady. And there are times, like I forget it, like around the holidays when before COVID especially, but around the holidays when people were kind of at home more, so they're on the computer more, and and so at certain times interest kind of speeds up, but on the whole of it, it's been a fairly linear a trajectory. And I know that I think there are other NDE groups also on Facebook, and it's kind of similar watching them all. And I feel like the more it's like as people join and they're like, oh wow, never heard about this before, and then there are the other friends or family sees that and join too, and definitely it's spreading into the world.
All right, I'm going to switch gears on you. Do you have any projects that you're working on that you want us to know about?
Good question. Well, I have started a book, but it's a little soon for an end date. However, but yeah, and I've heard over and over when I've had readings that they mention a book, and I've been kind of slow on that. But also something that I forgot to mention too is that in a lot of the intuitive readings I've had from mediums and psychics, and even friends who just happen to be intuitive, I've had a lot of those, and a lot of them are from the NDE group, and they're experiencers who will message me in private, and say, hey Ned, I got this message for you, and I'll share it. And so, but people have told me that I am intuitive too, and I want to add, and we all are our souls in a human form. And so we all have intuition. It's just, some of us, it's more prominent or more open than others. And so, but I've been told that I can definitely do a mediumship work and things like this. And so I actually have started, I'm still kind of in a learning curve of it, but I definitely, for anyone who might want a reading, I'm open. And I say that as I'm a little nervous about it because it takes effort, it takes, focus, but definitely the readings that I've given, the information, is often like, so, it surprises you. And I want to add too, because as a scientist kind of person, I'm not a person who just believes things. And so when it comes to near-death experiences, the evidence is overwhelming. The evidence is concrete. You can't, the people who say it's hallucination are just flat out ignoring the evidence. They're like, I'm not going to look at that. And I say that because it's the same with mediums and psychics. The evidence is definitely overwhelming, and it's totally not the the cold reading or the hot reading, like the mentalist tricks that magicians use, because those all involve logic. And they basically, you have to kind of, look at a person and assume based on their age, their gender, who they are. You kind of assume things and you basically guess, you make educated guesses, and you give the illusion that, oh yeah, I got this from my intuition. Real mediumship is not like that at all. You actually, you push your logic away, you clear your mind, and then you let information drop in. And then it's just like, oh wow, I saw that, and then I say that, and then this person says, oh yeah, well that was, I was 8 years old and this happened, and what you said exactly matches. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that, and so what an answer.
Oh, that's okay. All right. If someone wants to reach out to you, how do they do that?
On Facebook, I am Ned Matania, and I guess it's on the show here, but it's MATINNIA. You can also email me at a seeker, which is SEEKER. Then the number is 812@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, I'm usually active on Facebook and email.
All right, Ned. Well, I really appreciate you giving me some of your time today. I'm looking forward to you doing some more great stuff. And when you get your book ready, let me know, because we can have you back on the show and talk about your book.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. All right, Jeff. It was a great interview.
Thank you. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.